From the heart of rural France, this is the Keto Woman podcast, brought to you by me. Hello Keto lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall, and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence, and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. I've been keto now for over 2 years, and it has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs under 20 grams a day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like full fat dairy. Choose delicious fatty proteins and be free and easy with oily dressings on salad and butter on your veggies. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalized keto. You'll hear all sorts of ways to keto from my guests. There is no one way to do keto, no one size fits all. I hope to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we really can't give you medical advice. It's always best to consult your own doctor when making big changes to your diet and lifestyle, because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Wouldn't it be helpful to have one place where you could find all the links? Want to sign up to my new Patreon exclusive Facebook group, Daisy's Lovelies? No problem. How about subscribing to my YouTube channel? Please help me notch up my first 1,000 subscribers by going to links.ketowomanpodcast.com and following the YouTube link. Not following me on Instagram yet? Hit the Instagram button. You get the idea. All the buttons, all the links you need are at links.ketowomanpodcast.com. Welcome to episode number 143, where I'm joined by extraordinary woman Megan Pfeffer. Megan is an Australian-based clinical nutritionist with a health science degree in nutritional and dietetic medicine. Megan is coaching director, author, public speaker and CFO of Lipedema Simplified USA and is on the medical advisory board for the Lipedema Project USA. Specializing in ketogenic diets for the dietary management of obesity, lipedema, lymphedema, type 2 diabetes and other chronic health conditions, Megan follows a ketogenic diet to manage her own health after discovering she had stage 2 lipedema in early 2019. Megan is the lead author of the Ketolicious cookbook series. The first book from our coaches' kitchens, Ketolicious for Lipedema Holiday Cookbook, was released in 2019, and she is in the process of finalizing the second book in the series, Everyday Keto for Lipedema, Eating Well for Lymphatic and Fat Disorders. Co-authors include Dr. Catherine Sayo, Dr. Leslyn Keith, Mendy Staggs and Rayanne Sparks. Megan is passionate about helping people adopt a ketogenic lifestyle with a focus on improving health minus the blame and shame approach experienced by many overweight women, instead using an evidence-based and holistic approach. It's always a challenge scheduling a recording with someone who is on the other side of the world, but luckily Megan is a very early morning person. Rather her than me, I would be very grumpy that early in the morning. Welcome, Megan, to the Keto Woman podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm really well, thanks, Daisy. How are you?
I'm very good. It's really bright and early for you, I seem to remember.
It is early. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I'm so glad you agreed to do it this way round rather than me doing some crazy hour in the morning.
Yes, I'm definitely a morning person rather than the late at night person, so it suited me just fine.
Perfect. Why don't you kick off the podcast by telling the listeners about you?
Okay, sure. So I'm a clinical nutritionist. and I'm from Australia. I work with Lipedema Simplified in the US with Doctors Catherine Sayo and Dr. Leslyn Keith and our team of coaches and consultants. And we work with women with lipedema and lipolymphedema. I myself have lipedema, stage 2 lipedema, and I also follow a keto diet, which I've been following now for a couple of years. And I originally started doing that with my mother, who was overweight and was pre-diabetic. And I was studying my health science degree in my early 40s and doing a lot of travel, and we were building our house and working part-time and just, an incredibly busy, stressful lifestyle. Ironically, when you're studying a health science degree, we were all the unhealthiest we had ever been in our lives due to the incredible stress levels that it has. And I also live 4 hours away from the city. So, it was a 10-hour round trip for me every week.
Oh, wow.
20 hours of classes that you'd fit into a couple of days. So it was just an incredibly busy, stressful time. And I had started putting on a lot of weight, which I know a lot of women can identify with in their 40s, that can happen to a lot of women. I was staying with my mum at the time, finishing off my degree, and wanted to start a keto diet with her. She had been doing low carb for quite a while and was managing her health with that. But of course, when you're low carb and you're carbohydrate intolerant, you can still, because you're still having some foods that can trigger carb binging, you tend to overdo. You start to have a bit of sweet potato, and before you know it, it's, you're having slabs of sweet potato that you're sandwiching, cooking in the sandwich press and things like that. And so you can still, really it starts becoming, creeping up with the carb content. So I thought, well, keto really is, I think, the answer for that. Let's try keto and really, reduce the type 2 diabetes. I'll benefit as well because, I was putting on this extra weight and really wanted to deal with that coming to the end of my degree. So we both started doing keto and it worked really well. Started losing a lot of weight. We both started losing a lot of weight. Mum reversed her pre-diabetes. It really started becoming a great way of life for us. We knew that it was just a good thing for our bodies, that our bodies liked it. And for me, it really started moderating my moods. Like I was, getting very stressed out and would get really irritable and all of those, sort of things that comes with high stress. And I found that really modulated all of that and really kept that under control. So a little while later, once I'd started practicing, I had a client come to me who had lipedema and lymphedema, or what we call lipolymphedema. And she had already started keto and wanted some help to refine that. So she approached me, and of course I didn't know anything about lipedema and had to research the disease because we're not taught about that. We're taught about all kinds of chronic diseases when we're doing our health science degree, but not taught about lipedema. And so in researching that, I realised that it was actually something that I myself had when they were talking about painful legs. If someone grabbed me on the thighs, it would really hurt. And my partner would say, come on, that wasn't I wasn't doing that roughly, yelping out in pain. And he wasn't. It was just that I had really sensitive thighs if someone touched them. And easy bruising and things like that as well, but a lot of disproportionate fat. So if I were to put on weight, I tend to sort of remain fairly similar up the top half, but I was definitely putting on, the wide thighs and the big backside and putting a lot of weight onto my thighs, which I had never done before. So so that was an incredible moment, really realising that this was explaining what was going on in my legs. And I was probably really lucky that I started keto when I did, because it really brought that under control. I lost most of that weight off my legs, and really got down to a healthy weight, and have been able to maintain. My weight has sort of gone up and down, at various times when if I haven't followed keto. I find now that I pile weight on very quickly, and that's something that I just always have to watch. That if my partner had major back surgery recently and went to hospital, and it was just I initially started doing keto and it just all got too hard. We were a long way from home, and of course then I was eating every cake in the cafeteria because it was just complete stress eating and not sleeping for 48 hours and things like that. So really noticed how quickly. The other thing with lipedema is getting a lot of pain in your legs, and for me, eating a lot of sweet foods again, just putting so much weight back on in my legs and getting really sore, swollen feet. My feet were incredibly sore, and I notice that now that if I eat sugar for any period of time, I get incredibly sore feet, and to the point where, it's really quite tender to walk on them. Yeah, so really I was very lucky to meet my client who brought that to my attention. So I was watching a webinar on keto for lipedema. I couldn't believe that I found these women that were, talking about keto diet for lipedema. So I was watching the webinar and made some comments in there and said, I'm a clinical nutritionist from Australia. And Catherine said, oh, I want to talk to you. And she said, maybe we can do a webinar together. And it just kind of worked. And so I've been working with them ever since.
That's unusual, isn't it? When you mentioned about having sore feet, I thought it was, I seem to remember it, and it might have even been that Catherine mentioned it when I was recording with her a couple of weeks ago, that it's usually sort of down to the feet, but the feet are usually unaffected.
That's right, yes. Well, my feet are unaffected as far as the lipedema itself really goes to,
I see.
To just below my knees. I would say I have a pocket of fat that can accumulate under my knee, which is quite common. But I think there are other things, at play. Usually with lipedema, there are other comorbidities or other conditions that tend to be there as well, particularly if there's been eating that's been out of control or just eating the wrong foods, even for women that believe they're eating really well. And a lot of women with lipedema, of course, have been dieting, are very familiar with dieting and often do calorie restrictive diets. But because you're, potentially eating foods that don't suit your body type anymore, which is carbohydrates, with, women with lipedema seem to have often have high insulin levels. So we know that carbohydrate intolerance tends to be something that comes with lipedema. Yeah, so your body expresses that in all kinds of ways. So there's all different types of, a lot of women will have digestive complaints. Now that comes whether you have lipedema or not, because, so many people, reflux is a really common thing that people that have too many carbs in their diet, particularly as you're starting to get older. You probably know that that's a really common complaint that many people have that seems to actually clear up really very rapidly once you start changing over to keto. So I think the sore feet, my blood sugars, I was certainly, my blood sugars were starting to climb. So I was heading, towards that pre-diabetic stage. And I think, just a lot going on, also a compromised vascular system. When I was studying in the city and doing that 10-hour round trip and doing, up to 20 hours of classes in a couple of days, that's a lot of sitting. And that was really making life difficult for me as well. So I was getting a lot of pain in the backs of my legs. And that's really when I started getting things like foot pain as well.
So have you found then, you mentioned that the sort of timing with starting keto really helped with your lipedema. Have you found that it's really helped shrink the size of your legs as well as helping with the other symptoms like the sensitivity? Because I know people seem to have varying degrees of effectiveness with that. So some people seem to be able to reduce the size a lot and other people struggle.
I was definitely lucky with how much I could reduce the size of my legs. I really just believe that I was very lucky. The timing of when I intervened was really pivotal in how I was able to reverse that. But in saying that, you've interviewed Mindy Staggs before and she's done incredible work. We have very similar figures now, and she was carrying a lot more weight than what I had been carrying. I had sort of lost up to about 20 kilos of weight, or somewhere between 15 and 20 kilos, which is still a lot of weight, obviously. But Mindy had lost a lot more, but she had reduced a lot of that weight now. I mean, she has a stunning figure now, so it certainly can be done. And I think, obviously we're lacking studies in this area. This is quite new, of using keto for lipedema, specifically for lipedema, and we're going to try to fix that or remedy that and do some studies of what we can. But it's, possibly depending on how progressed you are of what you can actually reverse. But we're seeing amazing results with women. Yeah, so I really believe that depending on how keto needs to be structured a little differently and sometimes a little stricter, not quite as strict as what women with epilepsy, for example, will tend to have to be really strict keto as far as limiting your carbs really right down to the bare minimum, if any at all in some instances, whereas with lipedema we tend to try to do 20 grams of total carbs or less to really lower insulin and get a better response to try to access that really stubborn lipedema fat.
And you said you started low carb at least while you were studying. How did you find out about it? We did discuss briefly before we started recording that I imagine the way you were eating was probably not exactly what they were teaching you. You know, how did you balance that? And did you have to, should we say, I guess in the the papers that you wrote and things, did you have to say things that you didn't necessarily believe that you'd seen from your own experience? Did you have to sort of fit the mold that was expected of you, basically?
Yes, absolutely, because really when you're studying and doing assignments and exams, you have to fit if you don't tell them what they're wanting to hear, then then you don't pass. It's really that simple. So to a certain degree, I must say, I certainly was an advocate for low carb, so I made sure that during classes I would always bring that up to try to expose people to a different view so that at least they sort of had some information that actually this isn't the only way to look at this. And I managed a student group which had about 1,000 students in there, and that was a way for me also to kind of just bring some awareness of what that is, to at least have an opposing view, that the way that we were being taught, that flexitarian approach of eat red meat but only a few times a week and mostly eat plants and a little bit of fish, and you would be familiar, of course, with Gary and Belinda Fettke from Australia, well known in the low carb circles, and they were a massive influence on me. And, particularly with talking to Belinda throughout when I was studying and when she was doing the research on the history of the dietary guidelines, was a massive eye-opening moment for me of, that the religious and political underpinnings of what was driving our or dictating our eating guidelines was amazing, and really kind of almost upsetting to know of spending all of this time and money doing this degree to be fed a lot of propaganda and looking, I guess the thing that I've loved with low carb is that it really does enforce you to look at the science, to relook at the science, to question what you're being told. And that's one of the biggest things, I think, when you're at uni, and something that I tried to promote was to question what you were being told and explore what else was out there. And so that was a great experience for me, being introduced to the low carb world. I think Chef Pete Evans, are you familiar with him from Australia?
Yeah.
Was really influential in bringing paleo to the people. He's done fabulous work with so many people. He gets bagged by a lot of people, which I think is really sad, because he really has brought incredible opportunities for health to so many people. And, his way of doing things isn't, of course, the only way, but it's a fabulous way for a lot of people. He was around at the time, and so I really liked looking at his work. Gary and Belinda Fettke and the work that they were doing in Tasmania with their clinic was just something that I absolutely loved, and followed them a lot. And I think it just snowballs from there once you start and you see who's influencing other people, and you pick up on that. And all the normal then people of Gary Torbs and Nina Teicholz and just everyone in that circle. You just can't get enough of it then. And it was just amazing. And I was just sold at the beginning. It just all made so much sense to me. And, I think that's for a lot of us that have our own health issues. When you see something that works, I've actually never been someone who's dieted before. I've not really ever done a diet before. And so I've just found that this, because it's not specifically a diet, it's not calorie restricting, which is just something I've never sort of really thought to do before. I have had weight issues in the past, but really where you put on some weight, your clothes would then, fit. You'd kind of be spilling out of your clothes, or you might go up one size, but never really having, a huge weight problem. I'd always sort of just tend to get it back under control until my 40s. So it's just been a fabulous, amazing learning curve and something I've just fully embraced. And now really keto is something I specialise in.
Yes, I was going to ask you, have the Fettkeys sort of paved the way for it to be a bit easier to do that?
Absolutely.
To sort of work against the guidelines?
Absolutely. Not only the Fettkeys, Jennifer Elliott, who was an Australian dietitian who was expelled from the Dietitians Association for offering low-carb diets to her clients. She was incredibly inspiring as well. Between the three of them really have absolutely been trailblazers in Australia to open the doors for other health professionals to follow in their footsteps, because it is daunting to go left of field and operate outside the norm, and it can be a lonely experience because all of your colleagues are all on their own path and all prescribing 800 calorie diets and severe calorie restriction and cut out red meat, and we were a natural health sort of based uni where I was studying that you could promote butter instead of vegetable oils, like that was sort of accepted that was actually more of a health thing, which was terrific. So there were some parts of that we were able to incorporate. But yes, Jennifer Elliott was to me an incredible. I'm lucky enough to call her a friend now, but she is just an amazing woman, and the meticulous research that she does is so impressive. And for her, that stemmed from one of her daughters was overweight, and being a dietitian, having two daughters that were normal weight and one that was overweight, she wanted to find out what was going on behind that. And so I just love the work that she does and the research that she does. She's got an incredible mind. So the three of them I'm very much influenced by.
And do you work exclusively with lipedema and lymphedema patients, or do you have clients who come locally to you as well? What's the scope of the work that you do? I
do have a private clinic as well, where I see anyone who wants help with their health. That doesn't always involve keto. I specialise in keto, but for some people don't want to do keto and prefer to do low carb. But I'm always going to be advocating low carb because I just can't morally prescribe any differently. I think for people to be prescribing a high carbohydrate or moderate carbohydrate diet, I just don't think is within my vocabulary at the moment to do that. So it's certainly always from that perspective. But yes, really anyone with, obviously type 2 diabetes is a massive area of interest for me, and obesity. I love working with people with weight issues because it's something that, we talk about shifting the focus, because, anyone who's been overweight knows that you really are told to stop eating as much, eat less and move more. We know that's the message people are given, and it really
tired old message, yeah.
Yes, hit the replay button, but everyone is told that, and it really is that shame and blame type message, and really to the point where you will hear, whether it's nutritionists or dietitians or doctors, not believing people what they're eating. People are saying, well, I'm not really eating much. I'm not eating a lot of sugar, or I'm not eating a lot. I'm eating this small amount of food, but their weight keeps going up, and they're really just not believed. They're pretty much told that they're lying, that they must be, binge eating or secretly eating things that they're not telling people because their weight is going up. Whereas, I in fact see a lot of the opposite, and particularly with obese people, that often they've been calorie restricting for so long that they've actually slowed their metabolisms right down. And if you've slowed your metabolism down and you're still eating foods that your body's not handling anymore, which is the carbs, if you're carbohydrate intolerant and insulin resistant, then you're putting on weight, but you're not getting the nutrients you need, and you're really in a energy crisis mode because you're not able to access the fat in your body anymore, and your body can't utilize the sugar that's coming in through your bloodstream. So your body's really struggling for energy, and so it's actually then driving the need to consume more food to try to get the energy that it needs, and it's just becomes this vicious circle. So I think one of the best things that I love dealing with people with weight issues is being able to explain simply what's actually going on in their bodies. And I just love doing that for the first time with people and seeing them like, wow, oh, wow, okay, I was desperate to be told what was going on, and no one's saying anything. They're just telling me to stop eating more. And when you're already eating a really basic diet, and look, not everyone's under eating. Sure, some people are overeating, and binge eating we know is a part of carbohydrate intolerance as well. And that I know for myself, if I start on some carbohydrates, I find it very difficult to stop. And for sometimes it will take days or weeks for me to get back into being keto. Even though I love keto, but once I'm off there, it becomes a thing where I have to re-prepare my mind to go back. It really kind of takes over for a little bit. So it's an incredibly dominating force, I think, once that's taken hold.
Yes, it really is. It's a very strong addiction, isn't it? I'm the same. If I go off, just in style. And it's almost like I have to get to the point of punishing myself with it before I decide, right, enough is enough. And then it's a relief to get back to keto. Yes. It's almost like I have to sort of push it to extremes to get back to doing what's right. But I think even within keto, and you mentioned that with low carb foods, but I think, with keto foods as well, it's still very easy with, certain kinds of foods, especially things like nuts, for example, and nut flours when you're making treats and things. They're the kind of things that I suppose, because a lot of them are very like the old carby equivalents, very easy to overeat. And I find it very easy to just really start stacking the carbs up, even though it's all perfect keto food.
Yes, that's right. And dairy is something similar, but we do know that some of those foods absolutely hit the reward pathways in our brain and can stimulate those reward pathways. So I think the other thing, of course, the other aspect with that is what other purpose is food providing, because we know that we no longer just eat to satisfy our bodies and provide the nutrients that are there. And food is an important part of our lives, but I think that we also, when I work with clients, I get them to start really focusing back in on their bodies. For so long, we kind of tune out of our bodies because we've started feeling so bad and have all of these symptoms that we kind of tune out to them. And over time, you just tune them out and don't feel them anymore. The body adjusts amazingly well. And so sometimes you've even forgotten what symptoms you do have. And so one of the things with changing, and your eating lifestyle is to start really focusing back in on the body and relearning hunger cues and signals and practicing mindfulness. So bringing the body back the mind back into the body and really saying, okay, am I actually hungry right now? To make it an actual exercise that you go through to focus on, okay, am I hungry right now, or am I just thirsty, which we know, thirst is a common one, or really am I bored? Am I procrastinating? Am I angry? Am I happy? Am I all of these emotions that we've actually just mixed all of that in together and we now just treat with food. So we no longer say, okay, I'm really stressed out here, I'm going for a jog. We've started using the same solution to everything. I'm really stressed out here, I'm going to eat. I'm fabulously happy now, I'm celebrating. What am I going to eat to celebrate that? And it just, it starts becoming, instead of going and having a day at the spa and, making it about other ways of celebrating and commiserating and experiencing emotion, that we have really just wrapped it all into one thing that deals with every emotion we go through, and it's food. And for some people, it also becomes the only hobby they have, I think, where really the only outlet from life and displeasures in life has become food. And so I think that there are going to be issues when that is your only interest and you're using it as your only coping mechanism for any and all emotions.
I love that we spoke about this before we started recording, but I love the quote of yours, eat food that loves you back. And it really made me think again of that just now when we were talking about what happens when you start eating carby food. And it just brought a picture to my mind of a time back before even that I was low carb and had a serious ice cream addiction. That was my thing. It still is actually, but now I make keto ice cream, so it's okay. But I can remember having gone to the supermarket and bought several tubs of Haagen-Dazs because I didn't want to run out. It was, it was the weekend and the shops were going to be closed, so I had to have enough. And just sitting, eating it, and tears running down my face. So it just brings to mind that image. And then alongside your quote, eat food that loves you back. Well, that food wasn't loving me back. I was eating it, trying to get some comfort. And it wasn't loving me back at all.
Absolutely.
So I really love that quote of yours.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it is my motto as a nutritionist. Because like you say, we can absolutely love our food, but if it's causing you gas and bloating and stomach pain and loose stools or hard stools and joint pain and migraines and a whole range of symptoms that often, as I was saying before, that we've just learned to adapt to and sometimes not even realising that we're having. Some people really don't realise or have never thought to associate a lot of these symptoms with their food. So, yeah, you can love food as much as you like, but really the goal is, and you could tell people to eat legumes and lots of vegetables and lots of brown rice because they're good for you. But if you're not improving their health and they still have no energy and experiencing joint pain and a lot of wind that's causing them stomach pain and all kinds of digestive upsets, well, yeah, obviously you're completely missing the mark and not understanding where someone is sitting biologically and physically, how their body responds to food, because we are all, bio-individuality is a huge thing that we talk about at Lipedema Simplified, and just how different our bodies are. So it is absolutely about exploring what your body loves, because our bodies thrive when we're eating well and eating the right foods. Our bodies naturally want to thrive. That, I think, is their natural place of being, or the natural way that they're born to work. We certainly do a lot of things to it that interferes with that process. So, yeah, I think absolutely understanding. And, we talk about the keto diet, but there is no one-size-fits-all keto diet. We hear Absolutely. So often where people are saying, I've hit a plateau. Keto is obviously not for me. I've never lost weight on there. And, we'll have people say, look, I do really well for a few days and then I'll have some carbs, but, I'm keto, but I'm having carbs only every few days. And, that's a big one as well, because obviously you're not keto doesn't mean you're having a couple of keto meals, but then you're having your carbs on the side. Keto, is about a physiological state of being in ketosis, and having high carb meals and high fat meals at the same time is really not an ideal situation. But keto is absolutely different for everyone, and so incorporating foods that love you back is a massive thing with keto, because everyone does react so differently to different foods. Our bodies respond. Some people will have inflammation and a whole lot of other symptoms with dairy, and other people seem to process it fine. And there's all kinds of foods that, nightshade intolerance is a really big one with women with lipedema, where the nightshades can cause a lot of issues, and down to minute traces. Nightshades are things like paprika, and paprika is hidden in foods like mayonnaise, that you would not even know anything that has the generic spices is going to have nightshades in their chili and paprika and things like that.
And have you any idea why that is? Why nightshades specifically seem to be a common problem with lipedema patients?
Well, there are different chemicals in foods, and I know that why it's specifically nightshades with lipedema, I'm not really too sure. There are a lot of other specific food intolerances with lipedema as well. I think it really is just the state of our gastrointestinal health, and we talk about leaky gut, where the tight junctions in our digestive tracts have been compromised. And normally these tight junctions only allow certain metabolites to filter through. And when you have damage to your stomach, you'll find that these junctions sort of start becoming a little looser and start letting larger particles through. And so that is a real, that starts, promoting all kinds of food intolerances and things. So they really think, with autoimmune diseases, they believe that that's kind of the starting point where damage to the gut, it's such a vital part of our health. Damage to that gut sort of sets off this chain of events that leads to all kinds of health issues.
Have you found any other common foods that are generally problematic with women who have lipedema? You mentioned earlier about having to maybe adopt a stricter ketogenic diet. Does that include maybe some certain kind of foods that they need to either reduce a lot or cut out altogether?
Yes, well, we certainly, nuts and seeds are something that we don't often promote. And again, a lot of women can have intolerances to things like almonds is quite a common one. So almond flour, because I don't know if you've ever, a lot of people don't think about this, but just how many almonds it takes to make almond flour is a massive quantity that, if you're having something that with an almond flour pastry, you would never normally sit down and eat that many almonds. It's a massive amount. And again, there are chemicals and things in these sorts of products that can be problematic for people with gut issues and with other health problems. So,
and of course, the more you process them, the more you take in, don't you? If you eat whole almonds, yes, of course, you break them down when you chew them, but not even to the extent of almond flour.
Yes.
Let alone almond butter and things. So that's the other problem, isn't it? The more processed they are.
Yes, absolutely.
You're getting more of them that way too.
Yeah. And depending on where someone's digestive health is at, we do know that even there are a lot of vegetables that can really aggravate people's digestive system, and there are different FODMAPs in foods that can upset people, and there's also oxalates in food that are really high in spinach and almonds and things like that. And so if people have issues with kidney stones and people with a lot of joint pain, and there's all kinds of symptoms that can come from that as well. And the difficult thing with food intolerances is that it can be tricky to work out what they are, because it can take a few days, to see to see the repercussions of what food you're having. And sometimes, food intolerances are a cumulative effect quite often. So people, someone with dairy intolerance, for example, can usually tolerate up to about 100 mils of dairy. But you go over that and they certainly know about it, and they've got, gastrointestinal symptoms that are unbearable. So it's always the dosage, as they say, the poison is in the dosage. And that's true with anything. As far as other foods that women with lipedema struggle with, we often don't recommend sweeteners. Some sweeteners are known to spike insulin levels. When you really are trying to reduce insulin and not have that effect, then that's something that we don't recommend. But also from the perspective of, particularly when you're first changing over, people, I think, tend to turn to a sweetener to help them through with switching over. Okay, I'm not having the carbs, but they're still having that sweet taste and piling everything with sweeteners. I think that's a really missed opportunity, because when you are first changing over, one of the things that we've so become accustomed to is expecting everything to taste sweet. Sugar is in everything now. You buy a bottle of pasta sauce, it's got sugar in it. Everything, you name it, it's got sugar put into it, particularly, as we know, with low-fat products, which are the worst, because you take fat out of a product, you have to replace the flavour.
You've got to put something in.
Sugar. Yes, so that's a classic one. So we're just expecting everything to taste sweet, and particularly as far as the marketing dream of breakfast cereals, where we were all convinced to open a box of cereal to have for breakfast rather than having our eggs and steak or bacon. Cereal from a box really sets up that sweet, that's demanding a sweet taste from the get-go, and sometimes people can't bear the thought of having eggs and something savoury for breakfast. They think that's just way too much, that it's unusual, but actually it's unusual to have something so highly processed and full of sugar for breakfast. And that's normally the first thing I will change with people is to ease them into doing low carb is just to change their breakfast, not to do this overwhelming, change everything, throw out everything, do everything all at once, learn every recipe you have to make. There's a lot of it's a different way of shopping. It's a different way of cooking. You've got to find recipes. There's so many components to it that I really believe that starting it very gently and just changing your breakfast is the best bet, because as we know, the liver already releases, first thing in the morning when cortisol has to spike. We have our circadian rhythm, which is the melatonin and cortisol, and the melatonin puts us to sleep and gives us a good night's sleep. And then the cortisol kicks in the morning to get us up and get us active. And at the same time, the liver releases sugar into the blood from our stored sugar. And that gives us, our first hit of rebalancing our blood sugars, giving us energy for the day to get up and do what we need to. So you've kind of already had your sugar for the day when you think about it that way. Your body's already provided that
good
sugar.
Point.
And then to go and have a bowl of cereal on top of that, you're really just piling in. Your bloodstream only really has 4 or 5 grams of sugar in it at any given time, which is about a teaspoon of sugar. So if you're having a breakfast that equates to 10 or 20 teaspoons of sugar, which is not uncommon by the time you're having cereal and a glass of orange juice and, maybe some jam on some toast, you're dumping 20 teaspoons of sugar into your bloodstream all at once, which is a massive load that your body then has to deal with. And it's this, incredibly high load over time that really starts developing problems. So I think keeping that habit up of reverting to sweeteners when you first go into low carb and keto really is missing that opportunity to reset your taste buds, to broaden your palate, so to speak, to start seeking other flavours and, enjoying, I think your taste buds become so restricted in what they want when you're on that high sugar, everything needs to be sweet sort of roller coaster that you really are missing all of these other foods and flavours and experiences with food. So I think it's nice to give yourself a time frame of, yes, you may eat a little bit more, going through carb cravings and not having any sweeteners. I tend to say to people, eat as much keto food as you need to in that time. It will start to self-regulate. But in that time, deal with the craving with having some cheese, a little keto plate of some cheese and pickles and little snack foods that makes a lovely little tasting plate, and you feel indulgent, all of these foods that you're normally not allowed to have. And it takes surprisingly little time to go through that period of cravings. Some people it will be more severe for than others. But once you're through that and not needing that sweet, your body is no longer driving this need for sweetness because it's getting all the fat and proteins and energy that it needs. You've come off that roller coaster of constantly needing to top up your blood sugars every couple of hours. So it really helps to get control of craving those sweet foods. So I believe going without them altogether is the key for, no longer craving those sorts of foods.
And you really, by doing that, you really notice the natural sweetness in things, don't you? Things that didn't taste sweet because you're so used to, like you say, all these products that you're eating have got so much sugar in them.
Absolutely.
And then you suddenly realize, when you taste some red peppers or something, boy, gosh, that tastes really sweet, whereas it wouldn't have tasted particularly sweet before.
That's right, yes. And I think you kind of lose that opportunity as well if you're doing lots of sweeteners in your diet, because you're absolutely right. Nature does provide those sweetness in different foods. One of my favourite foods pre-low carb was pumpkin soup in winter. I would love pumpkin soup and eat bucket loads of it. And now I know why, because it was just like a bowl of sugar to me. I actually can't tolerate, you can do pumpkin soup in a keto or low carb version now, but personally I can't handle that overwhelming sweet taste. It's just too much for me now. I prefer other flavours in my food, and I prefer a bit of spiciness or butter, or there's just so many other delicious flavours to explore than just having that sweetness.
It's so funny. That was an example I used. I can't remember when in a recording I did recently, that I used to really like butternut squash soup. And you hardly ever see them here. And I made it just because I happened to see a butternut squash and I thought, I'll give it a go. And you're absolutely right. it tasted like I dumped the sugar bowl in there, and there was nothing else in there. So sweet. Incredible. And I think even if, because a lot of us like to have sweet treats every now and then, but I think having that period with nothing really resets that sweet taste. So even if then you do go back to maybe using some sweeteners, maybe making some treats at the holidays or something like that, you'll find that you use a lot less. I mean, every time I pull a recipe off the internet that has sweeteners in it, I usually start with half what it says, taste it and go from there, because otherwise they're just too sweet.
Yes. Well, some of the recipes have truckloads of, a whole cup of this and, massive quantities of these sweeteners. Yeah, I always think is over the top and never use the full measurements either. But one of the things that I love about what it does is it gives you back control of your relationship with when you want sweet things. Because at the beginning, if you're having those things every day, you're looking for it every day, and it's not you choosing to have that. It's that I have to have my daily fix of whatever, insert favourite sweet taste food. It's changing that to saying, you know what, I feel like something really nice. Maybe this weekend I'm going to find a nice recipe and I'll make something or other and you plan for it. But it's taking back control of your relationship with that food. And I think that's one of the big things with changing over eating, is doing it in a way that is putting you in control. And that's one of the things I love about keto, particularly when you do keto in the way that you learn about it and learn the science behind it and learn what it is that, why is it that you're cutting out this food group? And, once you see that, it's hard to turn back. And it's an incredibly freeing experience, I think, when you can start to take control of something that you've never had control of before for some people, to be able to start saying, no, I don't need that every day. I don't even think about it every day anymore. In fact, I've now got some sweet stuff that I did make, some keto treats in the fridge, and it's been there for a few days, and I've not had to demolish the whole thing all in one sitting as soon as I've made it. In fact, I've kind of forgotten that it's there. Not everyone is able to do that. So I don't think, I certainly don't want people to feel bad if they're making keto treats and they still have to demolish it all at once, because some of us just have that within us that it's really hard to, I certainly have this with carbs, that if there's a carb sitting in the cupboard or somewhere, it's like it's just sort of calling you constantly. Some people will leave it there. But for others, it's just this kind of tap on the shoulder the whole time that's saying, come on, I'm here, and you can't forget about it until you've had it. And that's the other thing with when you are going keto, I do say to people, once you've changed, start slowly and ease into it at a pace as you need to, so that it feels doable. Once you've done that and you're there, you do need to get down on your hands and knees and look in the back of cupboards, because when you're having in that initial stage, when you're first going without sugar, if you've never done it before, you'll be amazed of what little packet of jam that you've had shoved at the back of the cupboard for 6 years, or you'll find anything. And if it's not there, you'll actually, by the time it takes you to get ready and go out to the shops and go and get what you need, the craving, passes, because that's the other thing. It tends to pass pretty quickly. It can be intense in the moment, but if you just go and distract yourself for a while, distraction is a great thing for beating those carb cravings, because it doesn't last forever.
And it's so nice. I think that with keto, it's just so nice to be able to eat something that's healthy, that helps you lose weight or helps whatever the issue is that you're trying to resolve. And it actually tastes nice. So much this sort of diet mentality of it's just punishment and you're constantly craving all the things you can't eat. But, keto is delicious. Yeah. And I've reintroduced some fasting. I was fasting last week. I'm fasting today, actually. And it just really heightens even more how delicious the food is. I've found, you go a day or two without eating, and then you start looking forward to that meal, and when you start eating it, you just savor your food so much. I think it's a really good way of reigniting that passion about the food.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And, I think particularly for people, as you say, that have done a lot of dieting, particularly a lot of calorie restrictive, because really, if you're not cutting out the carbs, you're going to be doing calorie restriction to lose the weight. And if you do severe calorie restriction, you will lose it. But the problem with those diets is that, yes, you're starting to lose weight. And, of course, the only measurement of success of calorie restrictive diets is what the scales say. Your sole goal and measure of success is the scales. So it's all about how much you weigh. And really restricting your food intake like that, but not actually changing the foods you're eating, means you're keeping all of those food addictions, and you're not helping to change. You're not resetting your taste buds to change the sorts of foods you're craving, and you're not getting that experience of embracing different foods. You're still typically having the same foods, or you're eating truckloads of salads and, having foods that really aren't satisfying you. You feel good because you feel like you're doing what you should be doing, which is reducing your calories to lose weight, but you're always hungry and you're miserable. You're not really enjoying food anymore. And so that's always, to me, an alarm bell with a diet. If you're not enjoying your food and it's a struggle, and you're really only just eating enough to take the edge off hunger, which means you're constantly going to be eating. And a lot of women do this too, where they have very small meals. They feel like they've done really well because they've gotten away with just eating this very small amount. They've taken the edge off their hunger. They're not feeling this ravenous hunger anymore, and they leave it at that. The only problem is they're eating again an hour or two later because they're just holding off that extreme hunger, but they're actually always hungry. And that's because the body is just not getting enough nutrients. It's not getting enough protein. I mean, protein is just such an important building block for the body that we must have enough of it, or your body's going to start breaking down and using its own muscle. You'll lose muscle mass, and that's a really important aspect as well. And not only that, those calorie restrictive diets actually promote weight gain, because your body will get to the point where it says, I've no longer, obviously there's an energy, a food deprivation going on here. I'm just not getting enough for what I need to live and breathe and walk and talk, and just sitting takes the body a lot of energy to get through the day. And if you're not providing it enough, it will lower its metabolism, so it doesn't use as much energy. And, if you're looking to reproduce and start a family, you may find that challenging, for example, because the body says, okay, we just don't have enough energy to output into these areas that aren't vital. But it will want to reset that weight point. So it will start saying, okay, I'm going to start driving hunger here, and I'm going to start, sugar cravings, because we want this, we need more energy and more instant energy. So you're going to be craving more sugar. But it's also going to increase, the hormones will actually increase your appetite. And this is something that I will say to women who always feel like a failure because they've never been able to sustain these things for very long. It'll work for a period of time, and then inevitably they'll put weight back on and they feel like they've failed and their willpower was not enough. But really, willpower isn't involved by that stage, because you've got the willpower, you've done the work, you've lost the weight. Obviously, your willpower is there, and you've done it so many times. This is what women, want, what they've been striving to achieve. But your body's actually taken over by then. Your hormones are running the show and saying, no, we're taking over now. We're going to tell you what to eat and how much to eat. Eat more, and you end up with that inevitable weight gain, or what we call the rebound weight gain, which is normally putting on more than when you started. And that's really deflating for so many people. And that, I think, then leads to binge eating as well, because it's like, oh, I've gone without for so long, feeling unsatisfied and hungry for so long, that you kind of then go to the other extreme, and then that starts causing problems as well as mental health issues, because it is so depressing, really, to be in that constant vicious cycle. Really upsetting for a lot of people, and not really being told a solution to help with that. That is definitely one of the benefits that was leading into talking about keto and being truly satisfied with the foods and having delicious foods, and encouraging people to stop this just eating small amounts and eating frequently, because it's spiking your insulin levels, numerous times throughout the day, and not helping to maintain that hormonal balance that keto brings about when you get control of that. Being able to actually eat till you're comfortably full. Learning your body's signals again of eating until you're satisfied is a really new concept for a lot of people. It sounds so simple when you say it, to just eat till you're satisfied. But it's actually, it's not that simple, because, for so many people, they've been told, well, obviously I can't eat till I'm satisfied because that's putting on weight, and so that must be wrong.
Yeah.
And so they really are not able to listen to their bodies anymore. And I think that's a massive thing of refocusing how you're feeling, and just being able to eat as much as you need to until you're feeling comfortably full, that sustains you really until the next mealtime, and learning to tweak that along the way so that you're not needing to snack. If you're needing to snack, well, you just mightn't quite have the right ratios or the right foods that helps you to get through without doing that, and really then to know that if you are snacking, that it's probably being driven more as an emotional event. As Dr. Sivers talks about, that really snacking is an emotional event, and it's so true for so many people. And I think that's okay sometimes. Like, it's not that you're not allowed to ever do that again. You can't be that harsh with rules and regulations, I think, around eating. But I think being aware of it often helps to monitor that anyway, that you're, just being aware, okay, I'm going to have something to eat. I'm well aware that I'm doing this because of whatever, and I think that can help control it to a certain degree as well.
Yes, I think a lot of us lost those. It's not just, knowing when you're full. It's not ever really being hungry either. And I can remember when I was morbidly obese and when I ate a very high carb and high fat diet, I was never really satisfied, and I was never really hungry. I was just this sort of permanently weird in between the two. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also the tendency with this incessant need for snacks. And you see it everywhere. Parents can't go out without taking snacks for their children and things. It's good to get hungry. We're supposed to get hungry before we eat our next meal, and then eat our meal until we're satisfied, and then not eat for quite a long period of time until we get really hungry again, and then eat. I think a lot of us have just lost that. It's the two sides of the coin, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, it's been ingrained in us for so long that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And so many people are having breakfast at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning before work because they feel like they have to do that. And, they're doing really well if they're actually succeeding at doing what they're being told if they're having this breakfast when they're not hungry. Lots of people don't feel hungry until 10 or 11 in the morning. It's pretty common for people to not feel hungry until mid-morning. And, forcing down food when you're not hungry, thinking it's doing what you need, is really, again, not listening to your body's cues. Your body is very good at telling you when you're hungry and when you need food. Typically, there are examples of people not having an appetite ever, and that's a different kettle of fish, and that can sometimes be related to nutrient deficiencies or other sort of pathological processes at play, so that things that need investigating if you never have an appetite per se. And that's different, of course, is like you were saying, when you're actually in the middle of not eating well or eating a high carb diet, that I think that's different as well, of not really having an appetite when you're in that kind of zone as well, because you are actually, your blood sugars are kind of driving your eating, not necessarily your appetite, but you sort of start to know that, I'm getting a bit shaky, I haven't eaten for a while, or, sometimes that hypoglycemic type thing where your blood sugars have crashed and you need to top up again. And different cues will instigate eating. It's just so different. But I think being able to have the freedom of eating when you choose to, having control over that, rather than just feeling like you've lost control and you're just having to do, even eating foods that you don't really want to be eating, but you find yourself eating them, because of that hormonal drive that's going on to do that. So I think initially when people first start keto, they will still be having breakfast, lunch and dinner with some snacks in between, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine, because really the most important thing at that stage is just getting into keto. That's right. Being happy doing it and staying there. So do whatever you need to, as long as you're having keto foods and not reverting to high carb at the same time, because that's not going to bring about good results. But people will start to think, what, I'm just not hungry now. I'm going to skip that, and it will just start happening naturally, where they're noticing they're not eating as much. There's that natural kind of appetite suppressing effect, which is one of the benefits of being in ketosis, that your body is getting better quality nutrients. As we know, a calorie is not a calorie as far as the nutrient density and what the different foods do to your body. It's an incredible experience, I think, for people who really feel like they've been a slave to food almost. Some people are eating up to 15 times a day. Like that's a lot. That's your focus of the day is constantly on food when you're having to eat, constantly have these snacks, and it's all about food all day long. It's incredibly liberating to be able to break out of that and take control and really do it in a way that you're completely satisfied and enjoying your food and just finding new foods that you do love that love you back.
Yes, it's a real revelation to realise that you can control it rather than the other way around. And what does your keto look like? What's your general keto day?
I start with bacon and eggs. Not always bacon.
Me too.
Sometimes it's just the eggs, but usually the bacon, because of course, it's bacon. We love it.
It's bacon, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll normally have goat's cheese and avocado with mine because I love goat's cheese, and that with eggs to me is just delicious. I've had my mum and my niece staying with me for the last couple of days, which has been fantastic. And so, of course, we had the same breakfast, only with some hollandaise sauce on poured all over the top to make it a nice decadent thing for guests. So that's always fun. I love the hollandaise sauce version. That will normally be, I'll normally ideally have that, which is my sort of brunch, my lunch, my breakfast and my lunch, and to have that at around 10 or 11 o'clock or whenever it strikes me. And for dinner, we actually eat very simply. My partner is not, he's lower carb than normal, but he's not, severely low carb or certainly not keto. But he likes eating quite simply as well. So we will just, whether we, cook up some chicken wings, which is one of my favourites. I actually work a few days a week at my local hospital in the pathology department. And they're really long days and I'm absolutely exhausted when I'm home. So I'll throw some chicken wings into the oven. I just put them on a tray, sprinkle them with garlic salt, pop them in the oven. That's dinner underway.
Delicious.
Being cooked. I can go and have a shower and pop my jammies on and relax. And, have that with, with some salad and avocado and whatever sort of fats I choose to do that. But, of course, the chicken wings are a lovely, fatty, delicious thing. So, yeah, we really do eat very simply. We eat miracle noodles, the shiitake noodles with a bolognese sauce. Quite like doing that. Yeah, crispy skin fish, crispy skin barramundi we had the other night. Really just very simply, one of the things I notice with keto is it has really simplified. I like a bit of variety in my diet. I'm not typically the person who eats the same thing every day, although with the bacon and eggs in the morning, I tend to eat the same thing with that because I do enjoy it so much.
Me too.
Yeah.
I think breakfast is that meal, isn't it, where you can eat the same thing every day. Although I'm a bit like that. I've been eating loaded burgers, I think, apart from when I've been fasting, for about the last 3 weeks. So I'm one of those people who can eat the same thing for a long period of time.
Yes.
But breakfast, I think, is an easy meal to have the same thing every day. A lot of people do that.
I also love dinner leftovers for breakfast. I love eating leftover dinner. And this is a concept too that's kind of, new to people, where they kind of think, oh, can I do that? Am I allowed to have dinner for breakfast? And, of course, that just now it just seems so normal to, if I've got leftover Mexican or something, I love having that for breakfast or brunch.
Delicious. So where can people find you?
So I work predominantly now through Lipedema Simplified, and you don't have to have lipedema to see me as a nutritionist through Lipedema Simplified. We really, deal with women with chronic disease is, something that we work with one-on-one, where we really I really look at women's overall health and look at what symptoms they're having and go through, look at what blood tests you've got, and can work in conjunction with your doctors. A lot of women will already have endocrinologists and cardiologists and, a team of medical experts around them that I can work within that model. And, so through Lipedema Simplified is the best way to be able to contact me. I'm the Director of Coaching with Lipedema Simplified. We have a wonderful team that we work with, an incredible team. We work holistically, so we have coaches that help with emotional healing, a consultant, Rosie, who specialises in thyroid health, keto coaches as well that help women meal plan and come up with food plans and, really take control, and fasting for people who want to do intermittent fasting and all kinds of things. So it's an amazing team of women that we work with.
I'm working my way through the list on the podcast.
Yes, I think you've been through nearly all of us now, I think, haven't you? You've been a fabulous support.
Got a few left.
Yeah, well, thank you.
A few left to go.
Yeah, and thank you for that, because it really is incredible. As you know, one of our biggest things is raising awareness for lipedema.
Absolutely.
It's an absolutely undiagnosed condition, and a lot of women who think that they're all being told they have obesity that actually have this underlying condition. And so it's incredible, and your support for helping us to raise awareness for that has been fantastic. So thank you.
Well, it's my great pleasure. And I think it's very common, actually, it seems, that it's the women themselves who self-diagnose more often than not, because it isn't well enough known. So it is quite often, like with you discovered with a client who came to see you. So I do think it is really important to get the information out there as far reaching as possible.
Absolutely.
To enable the women who do have it to realise that's what they have.
Yes.
So that they can then start getting the help that they need.
Yes, absolutely. And so awareness is everything. I think that's going to really start building. I mean, Catherine Sayo and the work that she does at Lipedema Simplified is amazing. She helps so many, she works tirelessly helping so many women around the world. We are just very lucky that we've had a recent breakthrough. Previously there wasn't a definitive method for lipedema to be diagnosed. And of course, we have Dr. Rockford, who's from the Cardiovascular Research Division of Stanford University, who's just released a research paper which shows they now have identified a new biomarker that can do a blood test to diagnose lipedema, which is fantastic. And I think the fact that is going to lead on to more research, more awareness. We're being told that lipedema is about to really sort of take hold, because it's now being clinically recognised. Once you've got a biomarker for something, it really acknowledges that, yes, this is a condition, it is a separate condition. And because it affects such a great percentage, up to 11% of females, massive numbers of who it affects. So I think we're going to really see that moving forward quickly now.
Presumably at the moment that's still quite a specialised blood test, is it? It's presumably not freely available to have yet.
Yes, that's right. Watch this space. I think we'll have a lot more information on that coming out as the months develop, which is getting really exciting. So it is an exciting time for women with lipedema and lymphedema.
Yes, it really is. And what a wonderful group of powerhouses who are leading the change. So thanks to you and the team, really doing fantastic work. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you today, Megan. Perhaps you could leave us with a top tip.
Sure. Well, my top tip is really to make keto about regaining your health, not just about weight loss. Weight loss is one of the great benefits of keto, but weight loss is not, the only marker of health, or in fact, it's a very poor marker of health. It doesn't tell you anything about someone's health. In fact, if you've been calorie restricting, it's probably, potentially causing other issues and other problems and longer term issues and problems. So I think it's, a lot of women are just so used to measuring success all about weight loss. But we know that if all you're doing is measuring yourself when you're keto, you can potentially lose an opportunity, because the scales don't always reflect what's happening inside your body. Many women will actually lose inches off the various body parts when they try clothes on them or measure themselves, but the scales haven't reflected that. And so they give up thinking nothing's changed, but actually they've had a whole lot change. And keto really, is about regaining your overall health, and weight loss is an added benefit, but it helps to reduce pain and inflammation and, all of these other benefits that you get through, reversing your prediabetes and diabetes. So improving your metabolic health is a massive difference, but also the other thing to focus on, because we know food is not the only part of good health. It's also about quality sleep and, improving your hormone balance and reducing your stress levels. If you just have a good diet, that's great, but you're not sleeping well and you're stressed out every day and not finding a way to manage that, you're still not going to have great health. So it's not just about the food. So that's why we say really focus on regaining your health. Learn all of the different elements to becoming healthy, which helps you improve your weight. You know, if you're not sleeping well, chances are that will interfere with weight loss. So,
right.
You know, you have to kind of consider these other areas. So, yeah, I think that making a shift out of that old mentality of just focusing on weight loss to really understanding health in its totality would be my top tip.
Fantastic. It reminds me, actually, a woman in my Facebook group posted a little while ago, and I can't remember the benefits that she listed, but there were at least a handful, including, I think, just feeling better, feeling happier. And then at the end of the list, but only lost a pound or whatever it was, or hadn't lost weight, but it ended with that. And then a sort of jokey aside, maybe I should throw my scales away. So I said to her, okay, imagine that you didn't have any scales to measure with. You just didn't have any. They weren't available to you. But you still noticed all those other changes. You've listed those changes, but you weren't able to get on the scale. So you weren't able to add that metric to your list. How would you feel about that list that you've just written out without that bit on the end?
Absolutely.
So you're right. It's just, you know, it's potentially, it's part of a whole, but it's all the other things that are so much more important.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Well, thank you. It's been a really great pleasure talking to you today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Daisy.
To get the resources and links from this show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com/episodes. Please share this podcast with as many people as possible by sharing one of my links or just taking a screenshot of an episode that you enjoyed. Reviews really help raise the profile of the podcast, which gets it in front of more people, but also helps me attract a wide variety of guests. So please take a minute to leave a review on whichever podcast app or platform you like to listen on. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support really does mean the world to me. Thank you. Are you enjoying this podcast? Help me make more episodes and videos by making a pledge at my Patreon page, patreon.com/KetoWoman, or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman Podcast website. Don't forget to join in the fun on the Keto Woman Podcast Instagram and Facebook pages, and Daisy_Keto Woman on Twitter. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you would like to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. This week's end quote is Megan's health motto, which I really love. Eat food that loves you back. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.